trendsetters, welcome back to episode 6 of the BNSF Birdwood Sub. Now I mentioned in my last update where we left off about superelevation, so we'll have a quick chat about that today. And you can see here, if I get my cameraman Thurman, come on Thurman, dear oh dear, to zoom in here. You can see that this track bed is not level, as in crossways obviously. You can see a bubble here. Now it's off about, if I lift that bubble up there to get it centre, it's probably at 5 mil, maybe not, yeah, about 5 mil across the 140 millimetres across here. Now that is pretty well close to the 1.16 millimetres that NMRO, National Rail Association, whatever, say that your maximum cant or superelevation should be. So you scale that out, it's 1.14 millimetres between railhead, which is only 16.5 mil. Now you multiply that out to 140 mil, and you actually get about a bit over 6 mil. I think it's actually even a bit more than that. But that's really was a bit much for me, so I thought I'd go for about 4 or 5. Also, bending this big ply here, getting it to twist is not easy, which is good because it stops you from doing harsh adjustments, and that's the thing with superelevation. I've read quite a few forums and that on, and people say, oh, you shouldn't do it because it derails trains and all this sort of thing. Well, no, it doesn't. The superelevation doesn't derail trains, the rate of superelevation does. If you've got a straight track going on, all of a sudden you go like this, well, you're going to have problems because our freight cars don't have suspension, obviously, unless you're using KD trucks, I suppose. But you have to remember 1 millimetre in HO scale is 87 mil in real life. So if you even do a 1 millimetre adjustment here, that's equivalent to something like this in real life, which is nearly the height of some light rail. So we really have to be very precise with our measurements in the modelling form, because it's when you scale it up, a small difference here is a huge difference in real life. So when you're doing superelevation, like plastic surgery trendsetters, less is more, and subtlety is the key. So what you want is to ease into the superelevation really easily, and with this thick ply, it forces you to do that because you can't bend it quickly. So it goes into the cant or the superelevation really nice and smooth and slow, and that's how you don't get problems. You can also superelevate the track later roadbed level and superelevate each track on it, which actually would look prototypically more correct in some ways, but to do that you're looking at putting small shims underneath the outside of each track, and that would just drive me insane, and holding them there. And some people do that, and it's up to you how you want to do it, but I prefer to do it with the roadbed first, and then I can just lay on the track on the underlay straight on the roadbed. The key with superelevation is to get the track to look interesting and realistic without really knowing what it is that's doing that. You see a train go around the corner and say, gee, that looks really good. And you sort of have to wonder why it looks good. You don't want to see trains going along and then doing the old buddy NASCAR thing, screaming into the corner. So it's all about subtlety.
Righto, what we've done, we put this top bit of timber in here, and now we're going to line it up with the branch of the main line that comes around. So we'll show you how we're going to do that. Now we've cut it to fit at this end here. Scribed it, put that across there, we've cut that there, we've got it in temporary. We have to trim this off here to follow our scenery line around. But we've got it in place. We'll go up the other end and line it up with that end. Okay, we've got it temporarily supported there, and just up here is our main line coming around. You can see we've scribed the track in there. That lines up there and comes around onto a wall here. So we'll just cut that out, and I'll show you what bits we're going to discard. Okay, so we don't need this bit here, because the actual branch line from the helix is underneath this, so we need clearance for here. We need our road coming up through here that joins on to our main line here, and we also need another line coming through here from our yards. So we're going to cut rid of that. get rid of that, leave our line through here, and do our same little cut like we did on the other side up there, so we can get the two tracks going a different line, because this one has to come up at 2% and this one stays level. So once we do that, then we'll trim this around here to marry up with the scenery that's underneath, which is this lower track down here. So let's get her done. Right, now we've trimmed our baseboard here in line with the lower track down here, and I've also changed my mind again, trendsetters. This track here was originally in line with this yard track here and was going to be the same level. We were getting very close with clearance issues here, underneath here, for double stacking, with about 1/4 of an inch to spare. So what I've decided to do is keep this track here, keep the main line, instead of marrying it down into the board here, just sit it on top. So the bit that we cut out, which is in here, let me get Simon to come in again. Come on, Simon. Good enough for me. There we go. Now, originally, there was a piece of ply underneath this piece that actually slightly went up at 2% to marry with our main line. But we were getting very, very close with clearances down here for double stack. So what I've done is, instead of let it marry back onto this bit, I've just sat it on top. And I basically just cut out the piece that was there, put it onto another piece of ply, added probably about 6 inches so it could marry onto this bit here. And we've sort of killed a couple of birds with one stone. I now get an extra 18mm clearance from a double stack, so I'm right underneath here. And also what it's done now is it's put the main line on like a raised platform. So this is the yards all through here and all down the other end. And now our main line is about 18mm higher. So it gives you sort of a 3D effect. It makes it look a bit more interesting, I think. And also what you can do, go along a bit further, is maybe cut a little bit of this out for a little culvert or something like that. It's always a good idea if you can try to get a bit of 3D happening. I mean, yards have to be flat, obviously, but if you can get the main line or something, just making it a little bit more interesting. Especially if it has to run past the yards, so you can say, well, that's the main line and that's the yards there. So it's worked out well, trendsetters. As I was saying before, our clearance in here was getting pretty close. Had about 80mm, and the roadbed I'm using, from the bottom of this roadbed to the top of this one, I need about 78mm with a double stack, and I had about 85 in there, so it was pretty close. But now I've got about 90, 94, 90 thereabouts, so that's good. About 15 building my first layout, as I just cleaned some stuff up here. I bought a book that was probably a bit beyond my comprehension by Carnbuck, or Carnbuck, however you say it. You know, the famous model railroad publishers, called Track Planning for Realistic Operation. I don't know whether you can still get it or not, but it was sort of a bit out of my league, but it did teach me a few things that I remember to this day. I don't know where the book's gone. I wish I could still find it, but it went right into designing layouts for more realistic operation, as the title says. And I went right into things like transition curves, which we'll explain later when we're laying track, and superelevation, and how to align turnouts properly, all sorts of things. One of the things I remember, and I always remembered, is when you're doing bench work and you're doing things like, here we have here a classic S-curve, it's really important to get a straight in between the two S-curves as long as your longest piece of rolling stock. So if you're running, say, 80-foot auto racks through here, this piece here would have to be at least as long as an 80-foot auto rack. Now, if you don't do that, A, it looks a bit stupid, and B, you're going to get cars doing this sort of thing, trying to do that at the same time, and you'll end up, depending on how harsh these curves are, you'll end up derailing cars. So, and it just looks silly. So I work on about a 400mm straight between my curves, and which is Probably not as, no, it'd be nearly as long as an auto rack, but I don't run auto racks or 84 footers. But if I did, it'd be pretty close. So that's the thing always to remember. Always put a decent straight between S-curves, and you have to do that in your planning, because believe me, if you try and put one in somewhere when you're building a layout and you haven't allowed room for it, even making it a little bit longer, there's some S-bends in this layout here where I'm within, an inch or two of having the right straight in between. If you went another inch further, then your curve would go out to where you don't want it to go and go into a walkway and where you don't, all sorts of things. So, and I'll show you another thing that's important. Just come around here, trendsetters. Now, see this line here? This is the line of our curve coming around. Now you can see when we cut our piece of ply before, as I said, we actually put our straight edge across here to show where the curve finished, and the right angle, if you're going to join a straight piece of timber up, it should be down here like that. Now this is our minimum straight piece of timber here, and I can see by this one that it's going to join there, so I'll just put that up there like that, line that up there like that. Now you can see where this line comes around here, it's nowhere near it. Our actual straight is probably starting here to here. So our straight, instead of being from there to here, where our timber is, it's actually from here to here, which is way too short. And if I put that in and just said, oh, that'll do, and then brought the track around here, I'd have to start curving it way too early, and you'd always be looking every time, well, I would anyway, every time I look at it I think, oh, I stuffed that up. So what we do, I'll bring the camera around here and I'll show you how we line this up. Right, so what we really need is this bit here, down about here somewhere, because our curve comes around and finishes about here. So we'll just bring that down. Now what that is going to do is push the curve further round the corner and out a little bit. So it is actually going to take a bit more space at the other end, but that's just how it has to be, trendsetters. So I'm lining this back piece up here to get it square, then that'll fix this end up here, so we know the other end's up there, so it's about there like that. Now we have to bring our line out, and our end probably about there. So let's have a look at that. Rightio. Now see, our line comes through here now, and it follows that piece along nicely, which will go down to the other end of the S-bend, and we know the other end's lined up okay. Now you're probably thinking, gee, that's a lot of, he's rooting around a lot there. But believe me, remember the 6 P's, trendsetters. Now that you've done that, you'll have a nice S-bend through there, and you won't have cars derailing. And this is in a hidden section. There's actually a top section going over the top of this. So the last thing you want is bad track work underneath something you can't get to. And bad track work starts with bad formation, just like the real railroads. So get your bench work right, then you lay your track right, you'll be right as rain. I'm going for a cup of tea, I'm friggin' hungry. Now just coming back to our S-bend with our straight in the middle, you can see here I've left all this timber here underneath where the joint is. I'm just too lazy to cut it, basically. You won't see it, so I reckon the less cuts you have to do, the better. And if you're not going to see anything, well, just leave it. And you never know, you might want to rest something on here, or so. Yeah, this is where I'm not that fussy when it comes to joining things like this, especially when you can't see it. So now if we follow our branch line here around, this is riveting stuff now. Whew. Starting to look like a layout, trendsetters. Now there is where my Atlas Truss bridge is going, which arrived in the mail yesterday. It's very exciting. So it's going in there, and I have to build a whole framework underneath there to support I suppose the valley or whatever is going to be there. I don't know. I can't do scenery. We'll just have to learn. And then back up to where the covered section is. Big junction going in up there on the top level. And then our single track goes into a tunnel there and underneath there. And then we'll eventually pop out here and go up through our peninsula. That's what we were talking about before. In that section in there is where the helix will be. Now here's a tip, my little lovelies. Let's say you've got this board here, and one section, a couple of tracks on the board need to start going uphill, like they actually have to do here. This section here is level, but this section here has to start climbing at 2% about here. Now what you don't do is you cut this and then have another bit join in, like, you know, a flat bit like that, and start going up. No, a bad idea. 6Ps, remember. So what you do is you run a saw up the guts and stop it, you know, roughly where you need the grade to start, which for me is here. And also, as I said before, don't start your grade straight away at 2%. Start it slowly and over, you know, a couple of feet and build up to your 2%. Same as transition corners, don't go straight. We'll talk about transition corners when we start laying track, but anyway. So, you run a saw up the guts here, and we've secured this outside bit, which is level. And you wouldn't believe it, this ply's been sitting in my shed. I bought this when I was doing my temporary layout. So it's been sitting in the shed for about 3 years, so it's got a bit of a warp in it. And so we've had to pull it all down with screws down here. And you wouldn't read about it, trendsetters. Just to get Simon to zoom in here again. Come on, Simon! Honestly, it's hard to get good pay, hard to get good work. Now, see how it's actually wanting to bend up that way anyway. And you wouldn't believe it, trendsetters. That is almost 2% where it is now. And if we just sort of bring it up there like that, hang on a minute, I'll go and get my level. Oh. Here we go, we've got our level with our screw in it, remember? Where are we? Here, to adjust to 2%. So I'll whack that on there. And let me just zoom in here. Now that there, I tell you what, is so close to 2%, it's not funny. That's actually 2% there, and if we let it go, it's just a forfeit. So, that's, as I get in the shot again. Now that's a really nice gradual incline, and as you can see, we've got our incline here starting up, and then it gradually comes back down to here, and that's dead flat through there. And then as it comes up through here, along the saw cut, it can slowly split so the two bits can go like that, so you don't have a sudden start of your incline. That makes things a lot better, trendsetters. Now, what's the mad bugger doing here, I hear you say, especially you up the back there? Well, this is the raised roadbed that we're talking about, or that I was talking about. You were just paying attention. And this is the main line coming through here. And as you can see, it's got the it's sitting on top of the normal benchwork here. This is the yards all going all through here. And yeah, it just gives us a little bit of a 3D effect, and it gets the main line out of the way of everything else, and so you know that's the main line. And when it gets to here, the actual yards themselves come off at an angle through here, because there's a big balloon loop going in here. So this can just be by itself, and the actual main yards will come off at an angle here, and the main line carries on around there. It's groovy, baby. This has actually worked out much nicer, because this road here was actually going uphill and then coming downhill just a little bit to meet up with the benchwork, or the yard level, I suppose you call it. But now, since we've raised it up, it actually doesn't have to go downhill. It climbs up and just goes level, and you can see it sitting on top there. Now you might think that's a bit of a waste of ply, like you've already put the baseboard down, now you're putting other baseboard on top, but I'm using scraps, trendsetters, have a look at that. Just offcuts from curbs, and it won't matter because it'll all be covered with scenery. And I don't know about you, but I think even just looking at it like that in its super raw state, it's a bit more interesting than having tractors flat on the deck there, I reckon. And then you can, where we were talking about just before, that's it up there. Zooming. Just got to join that little bit up there. And Bob is your mother's brother. Well, trendsetters, I think that'll do for road beds for now. So, I hope you enjoyed episode 6. And I've got to keep going because I've got a hell of a lot more to do, I tell you. I'm actually inside the framework where the helix is going. Also, another important thing to remember is to build yourself access so you can get to stuff. There's no point if you've got a double stack train, decide to hit the dirt and you can't get to the damn thing. So in here is a 2.5 or 2.5 foot roughly section that I can crawl into, and I can reach the whole helix, every track of the helix around here from inside. So access is really important. So anyway, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Hooroo for now.